All right, so I'm going to share my OPS journey for 2 years in. So my type is double masculine, SETE, play, consume, sleep, blast, last. I'm going to talk to you today more of an energy dominant style video where I'm going to just share some life experiences. A lot of the other videos I'm going to be doing on this channel and the ones I've done are more information dominant. And so this is more going over my life, my experiences. So if you enjoy this kind of content, do let me know. I figured, since I have 2 years, exactly 2 years since I've been typed, it's a good time as any to share some experiences. My name is Habib and I'm an ESFP jumper in the objective personality system. And I've actually, not only that, but I'm actually a really good typer in that system. As far as the class typings, I'm over 80% in them, and so that's like really trackable. So the system is basically not like super, it's not really fake to me. I'm seeing the patterns, I'm understanding it, but beyond that, I think it also is a very good tool for self-growth. And I think if you're not using this tool for self-growth, then you're really missing out on really why it exists. I don't think you can really separate the two. If you are, then I think it's really, you're really just, I don't know, you're not using it for the right purpose, for the right reason. I would say I'm in a pretty good place in my life right now, and that's subjective at this time. That's how I feel. Really, where I've been before OPS is, I don't think I was in a particularly bad place necessarily. I was kind of working on these entrepreneurial goals, and then I just kind of stumbled into this system, and I was like, wow, this blast last thing seems super accurate, and demon sleep and all that stuff seemed so right to me, and I was like, wow, it's putting a lot of patterns that I've noticed into actual words and terminology. It just seems such a clean system. So I got into it, and then I ended up realizing there's a lot of potential for self-growth here, because otherwise I was just reading book after book. I was listening to a lot of different audiobooks. I mean, that's probably what I'd be doing if I wasn't studying objective personality. I would probably just read a bunch of books and authors, and whether it's self-help or science or whatever. And I think there's a lot of ways to get to some kind of freedom. But for me, I was already kind of in a good place, and I'm still in a good place, I would say. But the reason why that means something is because it does plunge you into darkness, right? So there's a lot of negativity that can happen, or you can feel or go through as you're getting your type. And so one of the main things is personal transformation. I've gone through many transformations, I would say, since I've been typed. I'm a kind of person who is pretty movable on the inside, as my type would suggest. I don't just take in the knowledge, I actually go and apply it. And when you're applying it, it does change who you are and what kind of person you are. And when you suddenly start to believe things that you didn't before, you're kind of a different person after you are now acting on the beliefs that you've had, that you've now gained. Newfound knowledge that's actually put into practice does lead to actual transformation. Specifically with being typed in the objective personality system, I would say yes, I have less anxiety and less need energy. So less anxiety, you would think a lead SE has anxiety, and you'd be right. A lot of the chaos and channel changing and jumping from tangent to tangent, researching, consuming, you learn a lot of problems. You learn about a lot of things that can happen, a lot of things that do happen, a lot of chaos, a lot of events that really can turn your world upside down left and right. And so, it makes sense to have anxiety. Understanding what NI is for me, and just organizing in general, putting things into buckets and chapters, and catch these things beforehand, in the pre and post event, before the event happens, after the event happens, like when you have some control over it, it's just less anxiety inducing. When there is a chaotic event now, I know that I'm going to put some process in place to prevent it from happening again. It may not even work, but at least I have a process for attempting to prevent future chaos. If I'm late to a meeting or something, like, I know, hey, there's certain things that went wrong. Like, that's a huge opportunity to learn. And so anyway, I have less anxiety, and I also have less need energy. I think before I got my type, I really needed other people to give me the plan or give me the opportunity. Rather than creating it myself, I needed people to fill in certain voids. And, if there was an injustice, someone should, come in and save the situation. People should do the right thing. And so there are a lot of shoulds, and there's so much need energy in that, and I still face that today. And so none of this, I'm not completely done processing everything. So I'm 30 years old, and when I got typed, I was 28. So, it takes time. A lot of maturing does take real life experience. Yeah. But yeah, I would say I have less need energy now than before. And that's just a continuous process. Yeah, I have more self-compassion now. Before, I probably did not think it was okay to, mess things up, or things not going well. And, if I had a plan and it didn't work out, or if I planned to be somewhere on time and it didn't, I wasn't on time, or I planned to do something and then I didn't get to do it, I didn't have enough compassion for myself before. Now I do, because I know it's part of a longer process. If I fail in any kind of way in life, I know that it's not forever. It's one thing at a time, and you don't just stop at one. It's not a singular event. These things repeat. And when you're in a mode of short-term thinking, if you mess up in the instantaneous moment, then it feels like, you really are just going to screw up for the rest of your life. This is the observer issue, right? But yeah, now I have a lot more self-compassion for, hey, things mess up and you just get back to it. And for myself, obviously being balanced with self and tribe, this also means compassion for others, other people messing up. You will not catch me saying too many things of like, hey, you should have done better. I will say that, but, I'm not going to hang in there too long. That's why it's really the observer thing. So I'm not going to go over the OPS concepts, but, it's not really the self-tribe thing. It's more like when you screw up the observers. When other people screw up the observers, right? Like the thing, when weird things happen, out of control or too much control, I have a lot more compassion for that. Yeah, actually, on getting typed, now really honing in on like the objective personality system, like I was not really into personality stuff before this. So the only thing I maybe did was like years and years ago, I took a little 16 personalities test online. So not much exposure at all. I just knew of the 16 types and kind of thought it's covering some things. I did get ENFP in the 16 personalities test every time I took it. But the thing about that is, obviously everyone gets intuitive on these tests if you, yeah. And there's a strong bias for it. There's a strong bias for intuition in the online community, and you're also seen as like, if you have a brain, you have to be intuitive or something. At least that was my exposure to it, is that there weren't really many people who were getting sensing as a type. And especially I worked in software engineering, and there's a lot of concepts there. There's a lot of concepts in engineering that you have to master, and they're not like easy basic concepts. They're actual difficult to grasp things, and there's all kinds of biases and stereotypes, and so but I didn't really even know about that. Even I just got exposed to objective personality system, and I was like, wow, this is really supporting a lot of the in-person interactions I've had the objective personality system does track a lot of what, I've observed in reality. Yeah, the objective personality system, it seemed like a good idea. It seemed really to click in my brain, and so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's get typed. And initially I held off. I tried to type myself and really understand the system, but anyway. But then I eventually got typed. There's some like kind of weird things that happen in the community, even like where like people didn't understand why you do the things you do, and so they're just like, why are you so weird? And then like, why are you behaving the way you're behaving? And then kind of like, let's just get typed so that you kind of have a better understanding of, how you can interact with people. So my particular journey in processing. So what happened is I had a self-type of double masculine, NEFI, consume, play, sleep, blast, last. And I also thought it could be NETE. So that makes sense because double deciding, it could be self, could be tribe. I did see myself as pretty selfish, and I do have double activated FI, so it makes sense. There are all kinds of reasons why I thought, self above tribe, but I'm not. It's, the tribe does get in the way of a lot of the things I want to do. At least that's a perception. Needing permission to do things and all that is pretty much what ends up happening with me. And it's hard to spot. I have a lot of things I want to do personally, so, when people typed me, a lot of people did type me either NEFI or FINE. But for sure people were kind of influenced maybe by my own self-type, but maybe not. People did end up typing me that way, with like that type, so it was kind of hard for me because if like 13 or 14 out of like 17 people typed me as NEFI or FINE, like why would I accept anything other than any, right? But when I got that type back from Dave and Shan, double masculine, SETE, play, consume, sleep, and I heard the audio, even within a day of processing, listening to what Shan had to say about it, it really struck me as true. But that doesn't mean I was really done processing it. It took me that first day to really get to know, hey, I really could be this type. And took me another week to process it even more. Then I did a Kendrick interview, I think, at some point, probably a weekend. That guy goes after people as soon as they get typed to do interviews. And but honestly, the processing is just an ongoing thing. And so even a couple months later, there's more processing. And I would say it took me a full year to really understand to the lowest, deepest levels. But I mean, even though I would say like after a couple months, I was pretty good on the type, but there's still like shreds of doubt, little shreds of doubt, I would say. And especially with feminine NI, right? Like that pattern is so shaky. That's like, wait a minute, like what is NE? Like I'm understanding so many of the NE people, right? They sound so grounded to me, especially when they work on their SI. Like it's very hard to look at someone who has NE and say that like they're leaving the planet. But when I looked at people like Jordan Peterson, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, like Robert Downey Jr., Lana Wachowski a second time, and Imogen Heap. So when I looked at these other crazy NE people who are doubly activated on it and also not really putting their NE on a tight leash, I started to see, I'm like, whoa, I'm not doing that. I'm not drawing on these archetypes. I'm not watching Lion King and just saying everybody is a fucking lion, like it's not, no, that's not what he's saying either. But like, I'm not like looking at stories and just drawing them from like all the SI and like, and using the pattern, and just there's a conceptual way of talking with NE that I saw that I was not doing, like drawing on mythologies and just concepts. Just the way they're using concepts is very different from how I was seeing over the course of a whole year. I saw how NISE is working, and it just made a lot more sense. I was like, oh snap, there's a completely different observer axis. Like as an observer, there's a lot to settle with that. Like it just doesn't seem real, right? But then, yeah, the more I typed, the more I saw, wow, it's a completely different way of looking at the world, the NESI axis, and it's pretty interesting. But moving on, yeah, it was kind of a lot to deal with. And so after that full year, I would say, yeah, I was pretty settled in the type. It took a whole year. And so I would say people should give themselves time. You will process quite a bit in a week, in a month, but give yourself a year, maybe a few years. I don't know. Depends how good you are at sleep processing. But give yourself that grace, especially if you get typed sleep last. Like, give yourself like a good 4 years, 5 years maybe. Because that's the hardest thing to see, I would say. Like, I have sleep third, and it was hard. So if you end up getting typed sleep fourth, like, that is really challenging. And I know there was someone in the community who was typed sleep fourth who ended up being sleep first. And in that case, I would say really try to cross-check with other community members. There's a few things you can do if you think you're mistyped or something. I'm not saying that person did anything wrong, but there's still some suggestions I would make to the community at Broad to really, if you really want to get your type right. There's a lot of my personal take is just that the more vulnerable you are on camera to people who are good at typing, more than just Dave and Shan, the better off you'll be. I mean, you don't want to, especially if you value the personality type, really talk to people and allow yourself to get hit. The more you can open yourself up to being understood by others, the more you can actually get understood. I don't know. It's something that I understand that maybe, let's say, if you do have a sleep first, you have so much control on, your identity, your information. You don't want your videos going out there. But then also, try to be a little bit more congruent with how much material you're putting out there and how much you're actually trying to use the system in real life, right? If this is important to you, go that extra mile to make sure your type is right. Because at this point, I would not submit for retyping or anything like that for myself, because I've done so many cross checks. Especially if you're an observer, you need to freaking balance your view. Your type, it doesn't, on some level, it doesn't even matter what it is. And so you have to get to that point where you just want the right information. It doesn't matter what type it is, you just want it to be right. Yeah, anyway, I have a lot of empathy for people who are going through that retyping process or typing process in general. For me, it did take a long time to process it, and it can be pretty sensitive because it is an amazing map to self-growth and all that. But there are so many maps that you can use for transformation. This is one of them. So you have the 5 stages of grief, right? So you can be in denial, have anger, and then there's whatever there is, the bargaining, and then there's a depression and acceptance. So whatever those 5 stages are, right? The grief that you go through, it sounds like it's making it into a big deal, I have NIFI as the functions. let's say you're SITI and you're like, why are these gamma quadra, which is those functions are, why are these FI people or these NI people, why are they taking this pattern so seriously? Why is this so important? It's because we are seeing something. Like, this is a really effective tool for self-transformation. And so when you really come across a tool this powerful, you do want to be careful in your processing. Understand you go from one stage to the next with grief. Because if you do accept it, it is kind of a lot. It's a world-breaking thing. Because it can predict, the amount of predictability baked into this system is so much. You're actually able to predict future problems, problems in your past, things that are happening in your present. Anyway, so it makes sense to grieve no matter what type you are. Allow yourself to go through that process step by step. And, if you find yourself skipping something, like maybe you skip denial, you might end up right back there, right? Like, you'd be like, oh, I accept my type. And then like 6 months later, you're like, you know what? Maybe it's not, So like, let yourself go through denial and like, however many times, and just understand, why you're accepting it. Like, is it because you know how to type? Is it because you've seen the evidence? Is it because you understand the idea of you potentially being this type? Allow yourself to go through the process. Because I would say for me, having gotten really good at typing, I have a lot of proof to just completely accept the type. I almost have no choice because of how much I know and how much I've seen, the level of proof. But yeah, I mean, it's still a theory at the end of the day. It's still an idea. It's still a concept, and the whole thing is in beta technically. So from a technical perspective, like, yeah, you can still kind of like not accept it. But for me and where I'm at today, I accept my type and I accept what this thing is as a system, as a theory, as an idea. And what you want to do is test it in reality. Like, let's say you're some type. Let's say it's even wrong. Let's say it's only 7 or 8 out of 9 coins correct. But you can use that to help yourself in reality. That's good enough. Let's say the whole thing is wrong. Let's say the whole theory is wrong, but you're able to move forward in reality. Then that doesn't even matter, right? It doesn't even matter that, whether you get your type right or, whether the theory's real or not, just like religion, okay, maybe I should make that point. People are sensitive. But whatever gets you moving, whatever moves you forward, whatever moves you to that next goal, whatever improves your life and the people around you. So yeah, acceptance is pretty big. So vision, mission, and values. This is basically what you want to think about, what I think about. So having my type, understanding what my vision is, what my mission is, and what my values are. This is kind of an ongoing process for me, honestly, but it does keep coming back to this. This is something that I really want to hone in on. Like, I have a certain vision for myself, I have a mission, and I have values, and yes, they change. I have double feminine and IFI sleep. So I give myself the permission to have those things change for now, right? But I know that those ideas are important. The concept of having a vision is important. Mission and values, like, there are certain values I have. I don't want this video getting too long, so I'm not going to share that right now. But I mean, a lot of this, you can see my values through a lot of this video. Like, what am I valuing? On that note, something I do value is catching yourself. So being able to work through a real life situation and see how you're behaving, whether it's perceiving or judging or anything really, any kind of action that you're taking or not taking, where it's like, hey, I do this typically, it's a pattern where, let's say I'm late to a meeting. It's like, oh, let's, try not being late or not showing up or procrastinating, right? Like, there are certain things that I'm going to run into that I can catch myself either before it happens or after it happens. And yeah, I mean, if you catch it after, it's about putting process into place for it not to happen again. There's a good idea about working on yourself rather than blaming others. I caught myself like blaming others. I catch myself doing that all the time, you know. It's something to continuously work on. And yeah, before OPS, like I would blame others. I would think, you know, and I still do today. The difference is I'm catching myself on that, and I'm putting more pressure on myself for, in all those cases where I see it's someone else's fault or someone else had something to do with things going wrong. Like I'm putting more pressure on myself to catch those situations, to be the kind of person who can create good scenarios, good solutions, good environments, and yeah, just having more responsibility over that. And let's say there is someone to blame, it's rather than blaming them, like having more constructive energy of like, how do we help them? How do we help them grow? So not only working on myself, but trying to use myself, like working on myself as an example for like, hey, here's, if you really want to work on yourself, like here's an idea. Like you can do it or not do it. I'm working on myself either way. Now, if you want to come with me, you can. But if you don't, I understand, because working on yourself is fucking hard. So I am not feeling as stuck as before I got type. Probably felt more stuck in life than I knew. And that's kind of a weird thought, because I don't think I understood how I was doing some of the same things over and over, making the same mistakes. It's really hard to catch, unless you have a tool like this. In my case, at least, with having an I4th, it's, you know, you have these problems and you just quickly move on. And maybe I would have caught it some way or another with like journaling or something, which I probably would have done regardless. You know, the fact of the matter is this is the path I'm on, and I'm just not feeling as stuck. Do I feel stuck from time to time? Yeah, I probably do. It's not for as long as it used to be. So before, I used to have some blind optimism, or maybe not blind, but just naive optimism, where I saw the silver lining to a lot of things, and, you know, I was very hopeful. But what would happen is a lot of negative situations would just pile up, and then it would break me eventually, and, you know, you kind of have a crash, especially myself having play first, double masculine play first, like, causes a lot of chaos before things come crashing down. And so what I ended up going after, having gotten my type, is I'm going towards the darkness and understanding that, you know, myself, I have all these, you know, negative tendencies that tend to happen, and just facing it head on. Because part of myself with like the feminine FI is I'm not willing to face my own darkness sometimes. I'm not willing to face the negativity of my desires, my emotions, my priorities, my lack of prioritization. You know, there's a lot of pain there if I look at how much time I'm wasting or things like that. And it's painful. And so, like, allowing myself to feel the pain, allowing myself to acknowledge all kinds of experiences that I've had in the past, and other people as well, right? Like, helping them acknowledge the darkness of what they're going through, instead of letting people just move past their pain just so we can get stuff done quickly. It's just, you know, there's a lot of room for acknowledgement on that darkness, and it does take away a little bit from that optimism, but it becomes a more realistic form of optimism and hope when you are kind of double deciding, double observing through the negative situations and scenarios. Yeah, and I'm giving myself more permission these days to feel all the negativity. Yeah, just giving myself more permission for all kinds of things. It's, you know, having the TE above FI, there are all kinds of things I want to do, and there's, you know, not a lot of, it feels like there's not a lot of time. It feels like I need to be pulled in different directions. And so giving myself the permission to not do all these TE things and do a few more FI things, that makes all the difference. Just dialing a little bit back on, some of the SETE, I'm allowed to go do some of the NIFI. Speaking of NIFI, I know both Andrew Yang and Ken Honda talk about abundance a lot. And so the abundance versus scarcity mindset is a big one for, I would say, the NIFI. So understanding that there are so many opportunities, so many resources, so many things that we can allow ourselves to have, and just thinking longer term rather than short term, seeing yourself as having a lot of time. You can have time and patience, long-term strategy for everything, and just giving yourself all those resources to be able to actually dream. When you're making decisions out of short-term thinking, they're not the wisest and they don't really help you in the long run. Now, you kind of do need to use both mentalities. Sometimes you are in a very scarce situation where you have to solve everything immediately. But more often than not, we don't always take advantage of the long-term strategies. We humans are so biased for the moment, and life is actually really comfortable for many of us these days. So investing in more long-term outcomes would benefit not only yourself, but society at large. Having an abundance mindset not only gives you better results over the long term, but you're also in a less anxious and less fearful state. And when you start receiving the dividends of your long-term bets, you start having a lot more faith in yourself, a lot of belief in yourself, as well as happiness and enjoyment, and you're creating a good environment and everything like that. Yeah, the abundance mindset is a huge, huge takeaway that I've had from just studying the system and myself, really feeling a lot more abundant in my own identity and where I'm going. I feel like the number of possibilities that I can have in my life is greater. Maybe not in the quantity sense, but in the quality sense. The quality, the abundance. If I'm going after, let's say I'm building a YouTube channel, it doesn't matter how many people are trying to do YouTube channels. I can still go after some NI plan that I have because I have an investment for the long term. And the more the merrier. There's not some limited opportunity in this case, right? And so you got to have discernment for where can you make these long-term strategies work and where might it fail. In the other sense, you might have more competition in that scarcity mindset. It has its own uses, but for me, it feels much bigger, as a person who already has SE first, to lean a little bit more on the abundance and non-competitive, just betting side, where you're investing, the word investing, yeah. So it's good sleep energy. Another thing I invest in is systems. So this is one of the big takeaways I've had after my 2 years in OPS is finally building systems. I would have been building systems regardless, but this is one of my takeaways. I'm on this path, so just seeing what systems I'm building right now is one of them is journaling. Yeah, I probably would have done it either way, but it's good to recognize it as a system, and the way I'm journaling is kind of impacted by my knowledge of OPS and being able to catch myself in certain areas. Another thing is YouTube. And this is less obvious because YouTube really helps me improve my blast, and it's still not the greatest, but I know over the long term my blast is going to improve tremendously. And so no matter how good I am at blasting today, this is a long-term investment that I'm making in myself and a system that I'm building piece by piece, method after method, process after process. And so I'm really looking forward to the dividends that are going to be paid by betting on this aspect of my life. So my 2023 and beyond, there are a lot of things I'm hoping for, this year, as well as, next year. It'll be my third year next year, right? After being typed. There's a lot that has happened in these 2 years. So I've noticed a lot of things with myself, a lot of patterns, a lot of investments I've been making in myself, and systems that I'm building step by step. So I see my 2023 as, just more investing, continuing to build systems and to really, help people. I do want to help people in the community kind of process either their type or what they're going through. And one of the things I'm definitely going to be working on this year is letting go. So I still have this situation where situations arise in the play spectrum, and it can get, I may not already be prepared for it, so I react in the moment. And so the more I can let go in the moment and let go ahead of time, the better off I'll be, whether it's in the moment or, just beforehand or after an event happens. Just having a more mature level of processing. Also, I want to let go of wanting to be like the cool EP. This means like not always being the better best on the spectrum, like doing things badly, trying out systems, trying out little processes, being predictable. Being predictable is not cool. So showing up on time is not cool, but like, all right, no more being fashionably late, right? Like having a schedule, let's say I schedule some videos, it's going to be stale, right? So just allowing myself to not be the cool guy. That's a big thing for me. Letting go of saving the world. So I have a thing where, I do feel like I'm number one in the social hierarchy thing. There are reasons for that. I'll maybe make a video on that. But letting go of saving the world, letting go of, having to, help people even, right? Just letting go of that martyr syndrome with the DE. It's, you're putting people above you, and just letting go of that, I know it's going to bring me a lot more freedom and authenticity to that. And, I'm really looking forward to that. So authenticity and leadership are some things I'm going to be building on this year, where not only do I want to be more authentic, but I also want to couple that with leading by example and just leading people to, where they need to be, or, myself having some values that I'm trying to espouse and champion. And I want, let's say, for example, I value people getting their type back and getting processed on it. So not only getting their type, but also feeling good about it. And I'm not saying that's what it is, but like, I want to be able to lead by example on that. Also, for example, with OPS, are people getting any practical use out of it? I want to lead by example on, being able to get results in reality, or at least, build systems in reality that are helping me get results, and leading by example on that. Because otherwise, what's the value proposition of getting typed? I think it's high, but it's mostly theoretical at this point, because people do have to process a lot before they actually get some solid, real world, tangible results out of it. There are some quick hits and quick improvements you can make, with the whole theory and concepts, but a lot of the real growth takes time. And for myself being an EP, time is something I don't really use a lot of, because we need things to be improved immediately. We need things to happen so quickly. So giving myself that time to help people, patiently move forward in their life. Anyway, I I had a good time sharing my OPS journey with you, and I want to thank you for watching. And there's a lot of good stuff that came out of this. But yeah, it's I'd be lying if I didn't say there is a lot of darkness. There is a lot of negativity, a lot of things to work through, a lot of processing. But yeah, like I had a really good time with the 2 years that I've been typed. There are pits of hell you have to work through, and that's not to be minimized. But I have a lot of compassion and empathy for people who are going through this, and I would encourage people to be as vulnerable as they can be. Now that's a weird thing to say, I know, but I think if you're hiding from yourself and you're hiding from others, it's really difficult to get the experience you need to move forward and get good information and get good connections and have good relationships. Yeah. But yeah, it felt good to share, the 2 years that I typed, some of the lessons. It felt good to share some of the lessons I learned over the 2 years. If I shared everything, it would be well over 4 hours, probably longer even. There's a lot of good things that I've taken away from being typed for 2 years.